Pay the 500 or I'm calling the cops. The HOA president snapped, chin up, metal ruler in her fist like a badge of honor. And I almost laughed because who calls the police over grass? Then she actually dialed right there on our sidewalk in Maple Ridge Commons, outside Phoenix. And 15 minutes later, a patrol SUV rolled up, and the officer stepped out slow and professional, scanned the lawn, lifted his eyes to my wife, and you could see it hit him like a light switching on. "Ma'am," he said, voice changing in real time. "Do I know you from courthouse briefings?" And Elena gave the gentlest half smile. "I'm Elena Carter," she said, steady as a metronome. "Yes, I serve on the federal bench," and everything went quiet enough to hear the sprinklers 2 houses down. The HOA president Marla blinked like a computer freezing. Then she hissed, You ruined my life." And that is when I understood the lawn was never the point. The grass was just the match. "My name is Sam Carter. I fix transmissions and mount tires and try to keep my hands busy so my brain doesn't run laps. I married Elena 15 years ago because she is a soft heart with a steel spine. The kind of woman who says, 'Excuse me' to a chair when she bumps it, and also remembers every name at a neighborhood barbecue. We moved to Maple Ridge for joggers and scooters and Friday potlucks. You know what I mean? Quiet on purpose. And for a while, that is exactly what we got. Then 6 months ago, the HOA voted in Marla Hart, and trouble put on a name tag. She knocked on our door to introduce herself and stared at my wife like Elena was a bad memory, wearing a new outfit. Elena tilted her head the way she does. When a voice rings a distant bell, "Have we met?" she asked. Hand out, and Marla took a full 5 count. Before touching it, cold fingers might smile. No, and that no had a tremor in it that felt like anger looking for a place to land. 3 weeks later, we got back from a weekend with my folks and found a neon notice taped to the door like a scarlet letter. $85, grass measured. 3.3 inches. Regulation maximum. 3.0. I said something dumb about who even carries a ruler around the block. And Elena didn't laugh. She sat at the kitchen table, opened her laptop, spread a legal pad color, coded the notice like she was briefing the Supreme Court. "This process is defective," she murmured, and it was the tone more than the words. Calm but immovable. The sound of a door that swings and clicks shut. I said, "It's $85. Let's make it go away," and she looked up with those steady eyes. "It's not about 80, she said. "It's about someone deciding the rules only apply to other people." And yeah, that landed. Marla didn't mail the next notice. She hand-delivered it. She took photos from our porch like a crime scene. She cruised past the house 3-4 times a day, slowed to stare like she could will the lawn shorter. She asked the neighbor on the corner. "What we made?" asked the dog walker. If Elena really worked from home, it was conspiracy radio on 2 legs, and it was getting under my skin. Violation. Number 2 said, "Repeat." Non-compliance. $. Elena appealed in plain English, asked for measurement proof, pointed to the HOA's own remediation steps, and the more professional she sounded, the angrier Marla got. You could feel it like weather. Then came the monthly HOA meeting at the community center, with the flickering exit sign and the coffee that tastes like a paper cup. Elena wore a simple navy suit, I think of as her armor. She stood, not loud, not dramatic, just precise. "Your bylaws require notice and a chance to fix before fines escalate. she said. These notices skipped steps that matters, because process is how you keep power from turning into abuse, dressed up as order. And a few folks nodded, and a few couldn't meet her eyes. And Marla sat at the front table with her hands clenched so tight the knuckles went white, and I watched confusion slide into recognition. And then fear that looked like Fury's older sister. She whispered, "No, no," like she could turn down the volume on her own memory. 4 days later, a third notice showed up for administrative costs, then a fourth for property endangerment north of 400 property. Endangerment, our grass and Elena stayed even. She kept records, time stamps, photos, called a friend. For case notes, and I heard words like harassment patterns and repeat behavior, and thought, what exactly did my wife do before she started consulting? Which brings us back to the day the police cruiser idled at our curb, and half the block pretended not to record the officer. Badge said R. Ruiz listened to Marla pitch her binder of photos. Then he looked at Elena, and you could feel the air shift. "Your Honor," he said, "if I'd known this address was yours, I would have called ahead." And Marla's jaw shook loose. "You're not just a judge," she spat. "You're the one who put me in prison." And Elena tilted her head like a surgeon choosing a scalpel. "Paige Donner," she said, not a question. "Bright Horizons Fund. 18-month siphoning donations meant for kids you pled. Outserved 3 years probation 5, and you changed your name." And the block absorbed the sound of that bell and didn't know where to stand. The video hit the internet before dinner, a news van parked by breakfast. The HOA board held an emergency meeting in the church multipurpose room that still smelled like crayons. They voted Marla out. Announced an audit, neighbors who said rules are rules. Yesterday, found out fairness is also a rule. And through all of it, Elena stayed courteous on camera and firm with the board and kind with me. When I admitted I was embarrassed, I didn't know the full picture. She said she never lied. She simplified judges are safest when they are boring in public. Then she smiled at our very unboring sidewalk and shrugged. At 2 a.m., a few nights later, the phone yanked us out of sleep. Marla's voice slurred and desperate. "You took everything. You don't get to live next door and smile like you didn't." The line went dead. Lights were on across the cul-de-sac. A figure moved in her yard. Elena called the U.S. Marshals with the efficiency of muscle memory. Then she got dressed. I said no, and she said, "This is what I do. I face people and ask them to choose." And I watched my wife cross dewy grass like it was a courtroom aisle, while I stood at the window with my hands useless at my sides. Here is what Elena told me later in the kitchen. Over coffee that went cold, Marla had followed her career from prison read about the appointment to the bench. Hunted property records, Maple Ridge wasn't random. The HOA presidency was strategy. The smallest crown on the smallest hill. But a crown she could use to make the judge who prosecuted her ask permission to plant hydrangeas. And Elena didn't flinch. She offered a door. "You can own what you did and rebuild," she said. "There's a non-profit in Albuquerque that trains ex-offenders in bookkeeping. They will hire you if you show up sober. I will vouch. You will pay back what you stole over 5 years. You will do 1,000 hours of service with children's programs, or you can keep lashing out. And I will refer the harassment and the false report to the U.S. Attorney. Those are your doors. Pick the one you can live with when you look in the mirror." And Marla cried. Not tantrum tears. Quiet, human ones. Said she needed time. Elena gave her until 6 p.m. At 5:42. She knocked with 2 letters and a bag of old keys. One letter apologized to Bright Horizons without excuses. The other resigned from the board and consented to a full audit. She packed a moving truck before sunrise. And I wish I could tell you it ended there. But life rarely gives you end credits when you want them. 6 months rolled by, and Maple Ridge reset the fundraiser. Mr. Whitaker started put books on library shelves. My shop got busy enough to hire a second tech. And one afternoon, Elena put a call on speaker, and we heard Marla's voice clear and sober. "Judge, I'm